Yeah, so to start with, I think my setup here is I have the colors on one layer, and then above it I have a multiply layer that's clipped, so I can't go outside of the colors. Yeah, to start with, I usually just fill the multiply layer with like a red. I think works quite well for characters. Really, this color is like dependent, or like it should be dependent on like your like light sources and your backgrounds and stuff. But if you don't want to think about that, I think red's just a pretty good color. Like, I would just say just avoid using like black or like any desaturated colors mostly, because usually they don't look very good. And then I just lower the opacity to something I like 70 or so works here. The like darkness of it should be dependent again on the background. Here I think 70 looks quite good. Instead of just erasing this layer, which would make it hard to like go back, like the color, pick the right color, I make a layer mask instead, which lets me just erase with black and go back in with white, which makes it easier to work with. The reason I do this is so I can easily like block out the color, like the lighting, like quickly test different ones if I want to. Like for example, I could test like top-down lighting here, just real quickly. And you want to use like a hard brush for this first stage and make it quite large. Yeah, and my tips like for like how to make these shapes is like keep them pretty large and like obtuse in the angles. I recommend checking out like Synix's videos on like shapes and shadows. I think they're some of the best you can find. Right here, I think the shadows are a bit too dark still, so I'm gonna like lower the opacity of that layer a bit more. You really just need to play around and find something you like. Yeah, and like once I have the shadows blocked in like really quickly like this, I can decide like whether I like it or not. And like let's say I don't, like in this case I think it's fine, but let's say I don't like it, or like a different mood, I can quite easily just like get rid of it and like go for something else. Like I don't know, for example, like Rembrandt lighting, which is just like 3/4 lighting with like a triangle here usually. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people don't use like the strengths of like using multiply, which is like the versatility. You can get a lot of like variation really quickly. So yeah, I'm just gonna go back to the top-down lighting and show you what I mean. Like for example, if I didn't want red, I could just like Control U and, you know, try out something different, like purple. I think just like any saturated color is usually gonna look quite good. The cold ones on characters usually not as much. I usually go for like red, orange, purple. In this case, yeah, let's just go for make it a bit more yellow than it was before. It doesn't really matter, like both of them look like just as good as each other. And like here's the first tech, I suppose, where I control click the layer mask and basically it just selects everything I've like drawn on that layer. And then I invert the selection just real quickly and make a layer above that. Then I just pick the most saturated red and throw that in, clip that down as well, and then set that to add. And then from here I filter, blur, and Gaussian blur, and just play around with something I like. Something like that is good, and I just lower the opacity a bit. This method like doesn't work for everything, but it's like a quick way of enhancing like the multiply layer. And then on top of that, I take the blur, like the blur brush, and then I just blur some of the edges. You don't want to blur all of them, otherwise it's just going to look like using airbrush, which isn't good. There is like technically like a correct way on like how you should blur and stuff, but I think you should just experiment. Yeah, and you could end it here if you'd like, but I find adding some like bounce light helps a lot. I like blues for bounce light usually, but you can use whatever color you want usually. I just clip it and like start painting it in, just like in the areas I think like would need it. Like this is definitely not like a physically based like rendering like method. It's just like a quick stylized way if you don't really care too much about coloring. Yeah, I'm just gonna lower the opacity there and take a like a soft eraser just to soften that up a bit in places. And then like again, the beauty of this method is that I can just like set this color to whatever I want it to be, like a yellow, green, red. It's quite nice. I can also just play around with blend modes, like scroll through them and find one I like. I think low dodge works pretty well here, so I'll keep it like that. And like once again, you could end it here, but to like top it off, what I usually do is I make another layer above, and I go in and like just add a bit of like shadows and stuff manually, which like, yeah, like in the eyes are usually good to hand paint because, you know, they're where a lot of the attention of the drawing goes to. And I like adding just like hue variation in places, and for example, that's way too. Yeah, and maybe like some more ambient occlusion or like color variation in there to make it like look not multiplied, I suppose is what I'm doing. Yeah, I think that's about it actually. Let me know if you have any questions.